Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us at the KIC Radio Youth Conference. Hopefully you've had a brilliant day if you've been with us this morning as well, and you've had a good lunch as well. I'll introduce you to our guests first. This is going to be a big debate about youth issues that perhaps affect you day in and day out. So we really want to hear your voices. So if anything comes up and you think, either I've experienced that or I've got a question about it, please put your hand up because we will have a roving mic so you get a chance to come to us. But welcome, of course, to the lecture theatre here at Sheffield Academy. Everything discussed here today, it's been live streamed on the KIC Radio app, and it's going to be available to watch back after the event has closed as well. We're joined via Teams by several other schools in the Walsall Council Borough, so hello if you are watching on the live stream as well. We're going to be joined on stage by different experts who will discuss topics that are important to young people here in Walsall. Then there'll be the opportunity, as I mentioned, to ask the panel questions and join in with their discussion. Now, for toilets, you're going to follow the green area past reception. You'll be chaperoned by a teacher from there. We will have a couple of comfort breaks during the afternoon as well. In case of a fire, there will be the fire exit. Please leave belongings and calmly leave via the doors to the left and follow KIC Radio staff to the sports field. And, of course, as this goes without saying, be respectful to others and no bad language at all would be tolerated. Thank you very much. Right then, time to meet our panel. This is the chance for you to put your questions to them about areas that are affected by you. So first of all then, from our panel, Simon Foster, who's Police and Crime Commissioner. Simon, if you'd like to come and join me on stage, give a warm welcome to Simon. Next up, we have Keith Fraser, who's Chair Youth Justice Board. Keith, if you'd like to come on, please. We also have Councillor Gary Perry, Leader of the Council. Gary, come and join us. Now, Councillor Stacey Elson's going to come and join us shortly as well in the next section. We also have with us Mark Brindley from the James Brindley Foundation. Right, if I could come to each of you in turn, because each of you has an incredibly impressive title, but what exactly does it mean in real terms, especially to our audience and those watching on live streams? Keith, if I could come to you first, tell me a little bit about your background and what you do day to day, if you could.
Well, first of all, it's like coming home for me. I'm a Brummie, so I hope you don't excuse me. I've just popped over the border into Walsall, but I did work here for 5 years beforehand as a police officer. So I was a police officer for 32 years before I'm doing the job I'm doing now, so I worked, there's a bit of an echo here, hopefully that will disappear. So worked in the West Midlands and also in London. The job I do now, I'm chair of the Youth Justice Board for England and Wales, so we're kind of an offshoot off government, independent of government, but supporting the UK government. And what we will do is we'll act as a voice for children and young people. And our core role is about how do we try and keep children out of the justice system and also support them in relation to getting better outcomes for them, i.e. so you can be part of society like we all want to be and supporting your aspirations. If you do come into the system, into the justice system, we want to make sure that you are looked after and treated appropriately, and then what we want to do is try and make sure that children and young people don't come back into the justice system. And also we look at all of it, so that'll mean like looking at the police, looking at youth justice services, the kind of parts of the secure estate and how that's operating, and just have conversations with those who try and improve it.
Good stuff, thank you very much. So Leader of the Council, it's an incredibly impressive title, but what does that mean?
Well, I am on home territory, so I'm a Walsall councillor first and foremost, elected in 1998. So I represent just the ward neighbouring this school. So I'm very familiar with this school and the local area. I lead 60 councillors in total, 59 including myself. And we are representatives of all of the wards that make up Walsall. There's 20 wards across the whole of Walsall. Different politics involved there, but generally there's consensus over a lot of things that we do as a council. And what matters to local people. We manage a budget in excess of £260 million, primarily dealing with local services. Everything that you see and feel, from your bins being emptied, your street lights working, community-based services, social care, children's services, schools, all sorts of services that are provided, and I'm the lead member for the council in that respect. I also work at now I do in this new role at a regional level with our regional partners in the combined authority, and also linking into national politicians as well, as I have this week on a pressing matter in Walsall. So that's a little bit.
A big job. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Mark, if I could come to you next. Obviously, you represent the James Brindley Foundation. Tell us a little bit about your backstory and the tragic circumstances that, of course, your foundation was created for.
Yes, can you hear me okay? I'm not sure my mic's working. In 2017, my son James was attacked, stabbed through the heart and left to die at the side of the road in Aldridge. You can imagine the devastation to us as a family, but to his friends and the community, he's left a black hole, and we tried to fill that void in our family with a charity that we set up in his name. And that charity is about raising awareness of all the issues around serious youth violence that you all recognise as knife crime, but we tackle the reasons why young people choose to offend, why they make certain choices. We try to prevent those issues happening by getting to young people as early as we can within primary schools, but where people are already offending or involved in antisocial behaviour, we have an intervention as well, and it's called the James Brindley Full Circle Programme.
Excellent. We'll look forward to hearing more about that as the debate goes on. Police and Crime Commissioner, I mean, there's a title to really be proud of. Recently re-elected as well, so congratulations there. Tell us a little bit about your role.
Okay, thanks very much. Good afternoon, everyone, by the way, and thanks to Ormiston Sheffield Community Academy for hosting, as well as KIC Radio. So I started my career in the law 45 years ago. I practiced as a legal aid solicitor for 35 years before I was elected as the Police and Crime Commissioner for the West Midlands in May 2021, and as Ed said, I was re-elected for a second term in May 2024 earlier this year. So as Police and Crime Commissioner, I have some wide-ranging responsibilities around policing and crime and community safety and criminal justice and victim support services. And that includes, for example, setting the West Midlands Police and Crime Plan. I set the West Midlands Police budget, which is £750 million, a lot of money. I have tax-raising powers because I set the policing precept, which is that part of probably your parents' local council tax that goes towards paying for local policing. And in the widest possible sense, I'm there to hold the Chief Constable and the policing service to account on your behalf to make sure they're providing you, the people who've elected me, with an effective and efficient police service.
Well, now you've learned more about our panel. As you can tell, people with incredible knowledge in positions of power, the decision makers, people that you can talk to today and let your voice be heard, so which is an incredibly important thing, which is what it's all about today, the KIC Radio Youth Conference. So let's get into perhaps the main subject of today, which of course is the voice of the youth around here as well. The first subject that always comes up is knife crime. Is this something that is on the rise, or is it just because we're hearing more about it and it's actually always been there? Can we work round the panel and understand your take on it? What would you say would be the situation with knife crime, especially in this area?
I can't focus on this area in general, but what I would, because the perspective I'd look at is from a national perspective across England and Wales, so I could talk to you about that, and perhaps the Police and Crime Commissioner would have more detail around the specific statistics around here. But what I would say, I would kind of turn it on its head a little bit and try and talk about the crime that impacts on children and young people and start to look at it from that perspective. Rather than trying to look, and quite often what you'll see is that young people are demonised, young adults are demonised in relation to this, is trying to understand what's happening. And there's another balance there you need to kind of get across as well, is one around the actual crime itself in relation to knife crime, and also the perceptions and the fear. And what we'll see from the statistics that we published across England and Wales, you'd actually see that knife crime is actually reducing. But does that match the perception and also the fear amongst children and young people as disproportionately impacts on us? Say not. I'd say it's a greater level of fear around knife crime and also violence in general for young people. So, and then that can lead to children and young people doing things in order to kind of make themselves feel safe. that they shouldn't be doing. So it's what are we doing as well as adults in that space to support children and young people around that.
It's always tough going first because quite naturally the rest of our panel are going to react to what you said. I mean, Simon, what would you say? Would you echo, would you agree with that sentiment?
There's no doubt that knife crime and serious youth violence is a matter that is of significant and serious public concern and interest, and it's a matter of serious and significant concern and interest to West Midlands Police and to myself as West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner. What I would say is that there is a significant amount of work that is taking place to prevent and tackle youth violence and knife crime throughout the West Midlands. That includes the actions of policing, it includes investment in prevention, and it includes partnership work across the West Midlands, including in Walsall, and of course action taken at government level as well. Now, recently we have seen some reductions in knife crime and serious youth violence in the West Midlands, and so that is welcome, but I can assure you that I am not remotely complacent, because one victim of serious youth violence and knife crime is one too many. So I, as Police and Crime Commissioner, and I can assure you West Midlands Police as well, are absolutely committed to constant and unremitting action to do what it takes to prevent, tackle and reduce knife crime, protect young and vulnerable people and save lives.
Now, of course, you in the audience and watching on our live stream, you're the people who are living this day to day. You no doubt actually perhaps experience, sadly, knife crime or been out there and witnessed experiences. We need to hear from you today. So if you do have a question or a reaction to anything that our panel is saying, please put your hand up and we'll come to you with our roving mic as well. Perhaps we can speak specifically, Gary, about Walsall now as the leader of the council. What's your take on how we're doing currently in this area?
So, picking up on what Simon and Keith have said, I agree with both their sentiments in respect of the reducing rates of violent crime, and certainly knife crime in Walsall. We are seeing those rates reduce, although, as pointed out by Simon, one knife crime is one too many, and only this week we have seen an example of that in a part of Walsall. So, as a council, working with our partners, which are the police and housing and social services and Walsall, all the different partner agencies, we have a statutory role to play, a statutory duty around serious violence, and we play that as best as we can in terms of how we respond to these issues. A lot of my role and the job of the council is working with those grassroots organisations around the reassurance aspects, but also the educational awareness. One of the stark statistics, and Mark will probably talk more about that, is that young people who carry a knife are more likely to have that knife used against them if they're carrying that knife because they fear going out there and being a victim of knife crime. And that's a sad situation for anyone to be living in. In terms of Walsall, we have raised the awareness. We've invested, and I know the PCC's office have done the same. We've been lots of things around that educational awareness, bleed kits rollout. We shouldn't have to do it, but sometimes as well, loss of life, it's crucial to get emergency aid to individuals when we need it swiftly. So we've been rolling out bleed kits across community organisations, pubs, premises, business premises, places where crowds are likely to congregate. Working with the James Brindley Foundation on the effects of consequential behaviour of carrying a knife. We brought the Knife Angel to Walsall. I'm sure most of you will have seen that, or if not visited that. Again, there was a shock factor to it, but it's all about the awareness, particularly as we're focusing on young people as well. So there's lots that we are doing. We're investing in our young people through, you've heard Ollie talk about what we're doing here just in this footprint, but in other areas of Walsall that are more likely to be a victim of crime. We're talking like Bloxridge, Blakenall. There's been community tensions there earlier this year, Palfrey, Plex at Matthews, where we've reinvested, and that's the word, reinvested in our youth offer to work with those difficult communities, and we are seeing some good success there now. It's just a shame that, you know, other politicians of the day, successive governments, and I don't want to get political, because that's not what I'm about, but the disinvestment in youth services has probably led to some of the problems that we're seeing today, because it's an easy target for anyone to make a cut when we have to deal with our statutory services, social care, adults and children's. It's an easy target to cut services for young people, and I'm glad now that we're starting to reinvest in that locally.
That's an important point, which we'll definitely come to later as well, about where budgets are at the moment, and I know times are tough. We'll talk about cost of living crisis as well. Mark, tragically, of course, you've had real-world experience of knife crime with what happened to James. It sounds like you're working very hard to try and do a lot in the community. Is enough being done? What can we do?
Okay, can I start by talking about a statistic? Of 16 to 25-year-olds, the statistic is that only 3% actually carry a knife. But the way it's reported in the media, you could be forgiven for thinking most young people carry knives. In fact, when we've asked young people what they think that statistic is, it's usually around 50 to 70%, even occasionally up to 95%. So I want to put that point across. And the majority of young people who do carry is specifically out of fear. So what can we do? Well, the highest rise in young people carrying knives is of 15 to 17-year-olds. So they're young people of school age. And for me, it's absolutely imperative that a programme of consequential thinking, like the James Brindley Full Circle programme, is in every single school, certainly across Walsall, the West Midlands, but I'd like to see it national, because the impacts, the positive outcomes of our work, mentoring young people one-to-one or through workshops, is having a really positive impact on young people's lives.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate your thoughts on that. Before we move on from knife crime, and a lot of these subjects actually dovetail into each other very well, does anybody have a question or reaction that they'd like to add to the debate at all? Hand up if you do, please. And at any time, if you do hear something you think, I've got something to say about that, please do let us know. We'd love you to be part of this discussion. So street safety, very much, I think, leads on from knife crime as well. We heard from Olu a little bit earlier. Clearly, that there are people out there. They are doing work. Keith, tell us a little bit about nationally, do you feel enough is being done? And is this the right statistic, the way to do it, do you think, in terms of visibility on the streets?
What I'd like to do is, rather than comment, I will comment on that particular point, but what I'd say is the underlying is we want to understand what works in relation to keeping people safe and keeping children out of the justice system. I think that's the big question that we need to ask ourselves, because some of the debates that you hear out there are we've got to be hard on this or we've got to be soft on that. I think the conversation that we need to be having is what works to support the futures of children, so that children can live and young people can live the lives that they want to live, just like anybody else, whether it be getting a job or going into or setting up a business or something like that. So that's a debate that we need to be having, is what works out there in relation to keeping people safe, better outcomes for children, and also stopping victims. That's where I'd start it off from. And then the thing that we know does work, and there's kind of 20 years of evidence behind all of this, is an approach that's built around working with children and seeing children and young people as different to adults. 2, it's about supporting the development of children and young people in relation to how they see themselves, what you want to see for yourselves in the future. Thirdly, it's about us working with, collaborating with children and young people, young adults, about what they want to do, not just doing unto, but actually having a conversation with each other. What do you want to do? What is the thing that's going to help you get the right outcomes for yourselves? And then finally, it's doing all that we can to keep children out of the justice system, because the sad fact is that once anybody touches that justice system, you are more likely to come back into it. It also stops you, or makes it harder for you to get work, harder to get into stay in education, and also harder for you to set up a business, etc. So it's a massive stigmatising impact on children and young people having that criminal record. So we need to do all that we can to keep children out. And the other bit is if they do come into the system, because that will happen for a small amount of young people, is we do all that we can to keep them out and support them having positive futures outside of that. And then just quickly touching on the things that do work in relation to that. It's not just one agency's responsibility, so I really do see it as Gary said earlier on, the Police and Crime Commission is a number of different agencies working together to see what needs to be done. Adults need to be developing those trusted relationships with children and young people. And also society really does need to focus on thinking about what works and trying to see what works in relation to what I said earlier on.
I think that's a fair question, though, about what's working at the moment, and we need to hone in on that. Certainly sounds like education and being proactive rather than reactive may be where we're going at the moment. From the Police and Crime Commissioner's point of view, I think you said a stat about knife crimes actually down at the moment. So would you suggest that things are working right now?
We have, as I say, seen some positive reductions in youth violence and knife crime recently, but I do emphasise again, there is absolutely no room for complacency in connection with that, and I don't apologise for saying again and repeating that one victim of youth violence and knife crime is one too many. But from my perspective, I think, just to answer that question in a broader sense, I think there's kind of three issues that I would pick out of what you've raised and also what Keith has raised there. Firstly, for me, the importance of making sure that we have effective community policing. I think that's absolutely central to the principle in this country. We say we police by consent, and I don't think there's a better illustration of that than community policing. And for me, as Police and Crime Commissioner, my top priority has always been rebuilding community policing in the West Midlands, because we need that accessible, visible and reassuring presence out on the streets, keeping people, families, businesses and local communities safe and secure. That visible and reassuring presence means building relationships with local communities. It means building that trust and confidence and that legitimacy, and making sure that people understand that policing is being done with them and not to them. Secondly, I think it's absolutely essential that we invest in essential preventative public services, whether that's youth services in particular. And as was said, there were disproportionate cuts to youth services in the West Midlands, and I think that was a big mistake. It was counterproductive and it was a false economy. But also investing in drug and alcohol treatment services and mental health treatment services, I think that's absolutely key. And then finally, as Keith said, it is absolutely essential that we believe in and we engage with and we listen to and we work with and invest, most importantly invest in young people. Why? Because, yes, of course, that will contribute to preventing crime and antisocial behaviour, but it'll also mean that those young people have the very best possibility of fulfilling their potential. And that's a win-win. It's a win-win for that young person, for their family, for the local community and society as a whole. And that's why young people always have to be a top priority if we're going to deal with these big issues, and in particular youth violence and knife crime.
Now, Gary, you brought up the issue of budgets, and we've heard quite a lot about budgets and disproportionate cuts that have been. For you, is it almost the impossible job for street safety to make sure that our young people are safe in this area because of what you have to work with?
I mean, nothing's impossible, but it is difficult because we, as a council, we are, by statute, by legislation, we are told what services we have to prioritise, and they are those big ticket areas: adult social care, children's care, special need transport and homelessness. They're four big areas which account for 80% of council spend. So our budget already is swallowed up in those areas. Quite rightly, you know, we would always want to protect vulnerable people across our communities, all age vulnerabilities. That said, it doesn't leave then much else for us to work with, to whether that's to support partner agencies working to keep our communities safe, whether that's to invest in regenerating our town and our local centres, whether that's providing opportunities for young people. So it is challenging, but we do what we can with our budgets. But I think if anything, and probably post-COVID, where we've got a lot smarter is working more on that partnership level in terms of pooling resources, looking at things differently. I mean, the community I live in now, in terms of Pelsall, and the one I grew up in, are very different. There was no digital age in the 80s and early 90s, and you guys know better than anyone else how digital advancement means that something that is said today can be around the world in seconds almost. That provides its own challenges, but also it provides its opportunities, particularly when we're trying to get messages out there, and when we're trying, like your own organisation with KIC Radio, when we're trying to provide new opportunities for young people to get engaged. So we can work smarter and we can work differently. What you heard earlier from Ollie and Operation Phoenix, and I'm glad that he spoke actually, because that's been a pilot for us, and the council has invested its resources directly in that initiative. And the reason being that quite rightly as well, so I'm not disagreeing with why we've done this, but an area like Pelsall, Aldridge, Brownells, the east side of the borough doesn't suffer to some extent with the same types of community safety problems that other parts of Walsall do. As a result of that, our crime rates are probably a lot lower than other areas, which means it's easier to pull a resource out to tackle those difficult areas from an area like ours. But we still have problems. And what we've tried to do is working with our police is say, actually, a lot of this area is about reassurance, it's about a visible presence, it's about linking in with our partners. So we can do the same job, but engage in a different way. So that the interesting thing there is it's starting to work. It's reducing the incidence of robbery, for example, from some of our local stores. Our elderly community who feel vulnerable at night in our district centres, it's about that visible reassurance, but also working with you so you can get to and from your places safely. So that's an example of what we can do with a small resource, and it is a small resource we've put into that, but working at that partnership level.
Mark, finally, I mean, your reaction to perhaps what you've heard from the panel, but also your real-world experience from being out there and actually working with people. Would you agree that things are starting to work now?
Yes, I would. Absolutely. Yeah, there is a downtick in the knife crime statistics, which is great, but there's an awful lot to do. There are services that are missing in communities, youth services certainly, and everything that I've heard I agree with. In terms of what more we can do, keeping young people out of the criminal justice system, I've tried very hard with West Midlands Police for them to refer into the Full Circle programme for exactly that reason, so out of court disposals. But I haven't made it happen yet, and I don't know why. But police constables change and time moves on. I would like to just touch on street safety. We have knife bins in Aldridge, Bloxwich, Palfrey and Carmer. The intention is to expand that to at least 12 across the whole of the borough. The idea being that if you want to dispose of a knife, or anybody wants to dispose of a knife, they don't have to travel distance to do so. So the bins are in local communities. But the bins aren't just there to dispose of offensive weapons. They're there as an opportunity for local communities to communicate with us as a charity anonymously about your concerns, whether not just young people, but anybody in a community. If they have concerns about what's going on in their communities, they can go onto our website and report anonymously, and then we can use that information to guide our services across the borough. So that's a very important factor. And from the young people that we mentor, we're finding that a significant number of them are afraid to use a knife bin. So there are misconceptions about knife bins that we debunk on our website. So please go on the website and look at that. You can find our bins through What 3 Words. I'm sure you're all familiar with What 3 Words. and we're in the process of developing an app to make it safer for you to dispose of offensive weapons. Because, as I was saying, the young people are saying, well, if I get stopped by a police officer on the way to a bin, I'm going to get prosecuted. And there is a possibility of that if you can't convince the officer that you were carrying a knife to go to a bin, you may face prosecution. But with the app, we'll have a defence that proves that you are on the way to a bin. So that's another area where we can help young people to dispose of knives. Sorry.
Thank you, Mark. Well, not only do we want your questions from the audience as well, we also been sent some questions. Let's get the first of those. This video question here.
Hi, my name's Harvey. This is my question to the panel. Can local authorities install more safety measures, such as bleed kits and youth outreach programs, to prevent violent incidents and ensure quicker responses?
Now, Gary, probably best to come to you for this one straight away, Gary.
As I said earlier, we are doing that. We've provided over 250 bleed kits. I know the PCC's office have also additionally provided a number themselves. We are also working with our partners to install what we call defibrillators, which sit alongside the bleed kits. Again, some of those have been provided by charities, some directly through the council. Our town centre, you will have seen that there's some specific barriers being installed in certain locations. That's not really linked to violent crime, but more sinister types of crimes that can happen in our town centres, like extremism and terrorism. Physical measures, knife arches. I'm a believer that one of the things we're looking at as a council is that our licensed establishments, your pubs and your nightclubs, and there's not so many of those these days, but where they have got them, that part of their licensing conditions that they have to put the security measures in place. So what we're asking them to do, at the moment it's voluntary, but we've had a good number who've already started to do this, is to provide knife arches in those premises, to provide bleed kits, AEDs, but also have a standard on the door. So if you're visiting that premise, with whether it's you or a family member, you know that it's got a certain level of safety in terms of the way that business premise operates. So those are some of the things that we're doing as a council.
Before we move on to our next question, do any of the other panel want to chip in? Please, yes.
Yeah, just want to say, I mean, as Gary said, earlier this year I invested £30,000 into bleed control kits. We bought 400 bleed control kits with that investment, and we've distributed them throughout the West Midlands. And in terms of youth outreach programs through our violence reduction partnership in the West Midlands, we, for example, have youth workers in A&E departments across the West Midlands. We have youth workers in police custody centres, and we also have youth workers out on school routes, chaperoning young people to and from school in certain areas in the West Midlands. We also have outreach workers and rescue workers working with young people who find themselves caught up in county lines activity in order to provide them with some advice, guidance and support to enable them to extricate themselves from a potential life of criminal exploitation. So there's a whole variety of different programs that are operating around youth outreach programs in the West Midlands that we're supporting in order to make sure that we, as far as possible, are able to prevent and tackle youth violence and reduce knife crime.
Keith or Mark, do you have anything you'd like to add? Keith?
Yeah, I think that despite what I said earlier on around the statistics going down, that's an unacceptable level. I don't want to minimise the harm that it causes. And I think that the question is absolutely spot on. But the part of it I'd kind of focus on there is around the kind of prevention bit. The prevention bit is part of that is around actually hearing the voices of children and young people. This impacts on disproportionately. And I was just asking the leader of the council outside earlier on if they still do the piece they did earlier on was around capturing your voices and finding out what's happening for you. Because it's all right us saying this is what you need to do, but we need to talk to the people who are experiencing this, who may be carrying a knife, and I'm not excusing that, or may be in fear of violence. So it's how are we capturing the voices of children and young people? And it's that way that we're going to find out what's going to be the most effective solution in relation to doing that, as well as listening to the people on the ground who are actually working alongside that. You know, and there's partnerships all over England and Wales, and the police are part of that through youth justice services that work with education, health, and also the local authority. So it's initiatives like that that's not just down to one agency, that are working together cross-boundary with a focus on stopping this stuff, on preventing this stuff. That's how we're going to kind of get there. You know, I kind of commend the work that you're doing in relation to hearing what it's like for children and young people. That's where you're going to get the solutions from, if you speak to those that are actually living in the communities and actually experiencing what's going on.
Mark, you've got something to add as well, haven't you?
I'm just trying to pick up on Keith's point about communicating with young people. That is absolutely fundamental, because you are the solution, not the problem, and so often you're spoken at or to and not listened to. So the reason for our website being interactive with young people for anonymous information is for that exact reason. We want to engage, and what KIC Radio are doing here is in the same theme. It's engagement with young people to understand the solutions, because we're quite convinced that you know what the solutions are. Certainly the young people that we work with, who are referred to us, tell us their thoughts, and we react to those thoughts. In terms of street safety, I would like to say that I would like to see police officers in communities on the beat, supported by community-led organisations that support the police in that vigilance, so that there's a community involvement and an understanding of what's going on in a community that can then be referred to the police for law enforcement.
Let's move on to our next question then. We have another one on the screen here for you as well. So my question for the panel is, Walsall's seen some frightening knife crime incidents in the last 12 months, and the West Midlands is one of the highest rates for knife crime in the UK. What's being done to reduce this and make young people feel, and it's hidden there, I'm going to say safe. So I think we have sort of covered this a little bit, but I'd like to go over it just one more time, if you could, specifically. Simon, can I come to you first about this? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so as you say, Ed, we have in part touched upon some of the action that's taking place to prevent and tackle knife crime in the West Midlands. But what I would say is that, firstly, policing. Policing, we have a dedicated Guardian task force within West Midlands Police. That's 42 officers who are ring-fenced to deal with serious youth violence and knife crime and knife-enabled robbery. They are dedicated and committed to dealing with that particular issue. And it's plainly important that we have that robust policing in order to make sure that those people who are intent on causing harm to others are held to account and brought to justice. But equally, we also have to invest in prevention. And we are investing a whole range of different projects in the West Midlands. I mentioned some of them, I won't repeat those, but it involves youth services. It involves making sure that we're engaging with communities. We have, for example, a faith alliance across the West Midlands that's harnessing the strength of faith communities. We have about 460 faith organisations that are part of that. We have a community initiative to reduce violence in the West Midlands. That's all about offering young people the opportunity to engage and offer support, or if they're not prepared to engage, then they will face disruption and enforcement. And that principle is built around the focused deterrence project that we have in the West Midlands. I have a network of weapons surrender bins, 31 across the West Midlands as well. And for example, in a 3-month period early this year, we removed over 1,100 dangerous weapons from the streets of the West Midlands through that network of weapons surrender bins. So there's a whole variety of different projects taking place, but in addition to that, we also need the partnership. We need the partnership between policing and local authorities and our faith communities and our voluntary and third sector, our elected representatives and fantastic campaigners like Mark here. We need to be working with people who have lived experience, as Keith said. That's absolutely key as well. So, because unless we're all working together on this, we're not going to be able to deal with it. No one single person or organisation or agency is going to be able to solve this. And plainly, policing on its own cannot solve this problem. We have to have a collective and cooperative commitment to dealing with youth violence and knife crime. And then finally, the point I would make is that we also have to have the support of government. We cannot have government undermining what we do locally and regionally in the West Midlands, because we need that commitment, and in particular we need long-term sustainable funding, and we need it to be invested in those areas of the country where it is needed most. And I would strongly put the case that the West Midlands is one of them, and in recent times it's probably not had the investment in terms of policing and essential preventative public services that it needed in order to enable us to ensure that we can most effectively prevent and tackle youth violence and knife crime.
Mark, can I come to you next?
Yes, thank you. I was just picking up on what was just said, and it's absolutely correct. What's really needed to turn the tide on youth violence and knife crime is for those people who are as yet unaffected by knife crime to understand that it's their business and their problem. So there is nobody in the UK who doesn't have something to gain from and have an input into turning this around. So I just want to say it's everybody's business, it's everybody's issue, and it starts in the family, at home, with vigilant parenting and caring parenting, and then it goes out into communities with people who are community-minded and not just introspective and looking at their own lives. And when that happens, when everybody takes responsibility for those around them, then this will end.
I believe we may have a question from the audience. If you do have a question, please put your hand up. I'd love to come to you. There we go. I will come up here with my microphone. So nice and loud for the microphone so we can try and get your question on. Where are you? Where are you? Where's the hand? I've lost you now. There we go.
Walsall is one of the highest stab rates amongst its area. So shouldn't Walsall have the emphasis on knife crime or the prevention against it? So it shouldn't be like the leading factor compared to those around it, and like take the step forward for the advocacy against it.
Gary, can I come to you first? Did you catch that question okay?
I did. I'm going to have to disagree with the statistic there, because compared to our neighbours, we're not the highest, have not got the highest rates for stab victims. That said, it's still an issue for us, and it affects us every time an incident happens, whether that's whether that results in injury or results sadly in death. It sends shockwaves across our communities. People like us are not immune to that. It angers us, it distresses us, and because we care passionately about our communities, we, like you, want to know why this has happened, and we search for those answers to that. So to your point around should it be a priority, should Walsall be more prioritised, of course I'm always going to have plump for a Walsall First mindset. That's point 3 in my leadership plan, is that we adopt that Walsall First approach to our decision making, but recognising we sit in a bigger world and a regional level. So we will do our best to fight for resources. PCC, MPs, others will hear me, and we will make political comments. That doesn't get the job done. But we'll all, as the PCC does, he fights for his resource from central government. That's our role. But it isn't just about the statutory organisations. That's what the message is from us today, really. It starts in our communities and our partner organisations, our charities, those people who know their communities best. Just want to make one final point. Since I became leader, we've put the lived experiences of our residents at the forefront of our decision making as a council and as a cabinet of decision makers. So we start with young people. We have given a platform for youth voice. We've recognised people who are care leavers, for example, as a protected characteristic for us in Walsall, with their own set of vulnerabilities that they bring. We have now had 3 cabinet meetings where young people have started that meeting for us and addressed us with issues that concern them and allowed us the opportunity to respond, which has led to Stacey leading the children's strategy for Walsall, which was designed with and by our young people. Hundreds of people attending youth summits and different focus groups to shape that, because we have to recognise you are the future. And the second point in saying that is we also recognise that young people below teenagers, so your 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds, we've got to catch them now. And that's why our approach at the moment is to invest in those opportunities for them at that age, particularly working along partners around the educational awareness at the same time, giving opportunities to distract them from being caught up in potential antisocial behaviour at a local level before they reach a teenage, and sometimes then it's too late for us to pull that back. So it's almost like we're reinventing the wheel that used to exist to some extent, but we've got to do what we can.
If anybody has a question, please do put your hand up. We've got a roving mic. We'd like to try and get it to you as quickly as possible, so hands up if you do have a question. Would anybody else on our panel like to react to that question from the audience and add to what we've heard from Gary there? Keith.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'll react to both really. I think one, it's really sad that you've got young people using words like frightening and talking about knife crime. I think we need to acknowledge that if those conversations are happening, then what is generating those conversations amongst children and young people? Because I know that when I was younger, in those dark, distant days back, that wasn't the kind of conversation that I was having. So we really do need to understand it from that perspective, and to pick up on what the gentleman said earlier on up there around it being a priority. It's a priority nationally as well for us. So we will do what we can to work across government at a national level, and also with senior leads across government and also regionally, to see what we can do to try and prevent this from happening, because it is shocking that children and young people are having a conversation about knife crime, because one, it says 2 things for me. One, it's happening out there, and that is definitely not acceptable. But 2, that conversation is generating a perception of fear out there, which could lead to more crime. So we've got to deal with it from both angles, really. And I've said this earlier on, I know, but it's important to repeat that. So we need to be tackling the fear, because the fear can drive and lead to more knife crime. And we've also got to deal with the actual crime itself. But we also need to put this into context. There's kind of 14 million people under the age of 18 in the UK. How many of them do you think, I don't like the term, that are locked up in prisons? There's 14 million people under the age of 18. How many of them at this moment in time do you think are in prison? If you think about that stat that we had up there. Come on. I'm not just going to sit here and talk to myself. How many?
Anybody got any suggestions? What do we think? More than 1,000? Less than 1,000? Where are we? More? You can put a hand up if you think more. Do we think more than 5,000? Do we think more than 10,000? Anybody got a hand up there? Are we even in the right ballpark at all?
No, not at all. Save this going on for a whole while, because you're going right off in the opposite direction. You're actually looking at about 450 children across England and Wales. And then half of those haven't been convicted. About half of those, roughly, are on what we call remands. They're waiting to go before the court. So for me, this is something which is doable in relation to it. It's something that if we get our heads together, we can do it. And what we've seen, if you look back over the past 12 years or so, where we've all been working together, you've actually seen these numbers reducing. It's where we're not looking at our artificial boundaries around, this is my profession, that's your profession, or that's the voluntary sector, and that's the private sector. Where we've worked together, you've seen it reduce, and you can look back at the statistics over that, and every single one of those statistics is a person. So it's really important to look at it from that perspective, and you've seen it reducing significantly.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, well, no, you're absolutely right. To argue for Walsall receiving the investment that it needs to deal with those matters, and Gary is, of course, absolutely right. It's part of his job to argue for those resources to be invested into Walsall. So I, as Police and Crime Commissioner, I invest about £360,000 through my community safety partnership budget, my prevention and intervention commissioning, and my communities fund into Walsall across a whole variety of different initiatives, and indeed the Violence Reduction Partnership invests additional resources as well. But equally, as you'll appreciate, I don't only represent Walsall. I represent the entirety of the West Midlands, and that's a big area, and of course it includes Wolverhampton and Coventry and Birmingham and Sandwell and Dudley and Solihull, as well as Walsall. So plainly, those resources have to be invested across the entirety of the West Midlands. But what I would say is that from my perspective, just as it's Gary's job to argue for investment into Walsall, it is also part of my job to argue for investment into the West Midlands. And just as I argue for investment into the West Midlands around policing and crime and essential preventative public services, that will benefit Walsall as much as it benefits anywhere else in the West Midlands. And one particular factor that I would just highlight, and I think it's important because it just illustrates to you the extent to which, in many respects, the West Midlands as a whole, and that includes Walsall, has been shortchanged and ripped off when it comes to funding for policing across the country. We still have 800 fewer police officers than we had in 2010. We have 500 police community support officers fewer than we had in 2010, and that's in the context of which there are many areas of the country now that now have more police officers than they've ever had in their force history. And that is deeply unjust, it is inequitable, and is unacceptable as much as it is to Walsall as it is to the West Midlands as a whole. And that's why I gathered all the West Midlands MPs together with the Chief Constable back in September, and we gave them a briefing about that, not only about that, but we left them in no doubt that just as Gary has no influence on that ultimately, nor do I, nor does the Chief Constable, but those MPs in Westminster do have some influence over that particular issue. And it's important that I said to them that if there's one single difference you can make for your constituents to prevent and tackle crime and keep them safe and secure, it's to ensure fair and adequate funding for West Midlands Police in the West Midlands. And this isn't about more money. It's not about more money. This is about a fair and equitable distribution of existing resources, which at the moment is not happening.
Mark, is there anything you'd like to add to this?
I'd just like to restate the desire for engagement with all you young people in, if you're feeling scared in your community, if you're not going to certain places at certain times, the fear thing, go on our website and tell us about it, okay? So if you don't know how to tackle issues with peer pressure, if you feel that you have mental health concerns, get in touch, and you can refer yourself into the James Brindley Foundation, or you can refer through your parents or through your school, but get in touch so that we can help you. Can I ask a question?
Please.
Having heard that, how many of you would feel able to do that if you felt the need? Can you give me a show of hands? Nobody.
There are a few
Are
hands
there?
here. A few hands here.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Does anybody have any further questions? Please put your hand up. We'll take our roving microphone to you if anybody's got a further question. Give us a good wave. There's one over here, Katie. Keep your hand up for us just so we can find you.
before.
In respect of young people, of course, you will be a number one priority for us, and that is why we've put so much emphasis. We have what is called, it's termed our Walsall 2040 vision. So as a place, if we don't have ambition and we don't have a vision, when we are trying to fight for resources, we're always going to be at the bottom of the pile. So we have to demonstrate to the decision makers, often above us, that we're worth investing in. And part of our 2040 vision is our vision for young people. As I said, you can go on our website as well if you wanted to look at that. That strategy, that children's strategy, is born out of that co-design, working with young people on what your priorities are. So we want to make that a reality, but not wait till 2040. So there'll be some key milestones that we're setting out in that document that we want to achieve by year 3, 4, 5. So in the next 2 to 3 years. And there's lots of opportunities within that, focusing not just on vulnerable young people, but on giving you opportunities, life skills, jobs, youth unemployment in Walsall, post-COVID levels are the worst they've been. So we're doing a lot of work now with our colleges, with our school providers, with the training, education. So it's not always about attainment. Apprenticeships is key for giving people who've got no interest in gaining a formal qualification, but have got a skill. So that's where the Mayor comes into it. At a regional level, we do a lot of work around that to actually reverse the trend in youth unemployment. So if I had a bottomless pit, of course, these are the areas that we would want to fund and support, because you are the future. Because all of that said, adult social care and supporting vulnerable. So Stacey will tell you, as really stark statistics, we're supporting over 1,000 young people in Walsall who are in a looked after care situation. That means they're not living with their parents. They're living in a care situation because of something that's happened at home, or they're at risk. That is significant. We want those young people to be given the same opportunities as everyone else. We want them to be living in Walsall. A lot of them don't, but we still pay for them to live outside of area. But that will always happen, and we'll always try and find the money for those types of activities, and certainly with adult social care the same. So hopefully I've given you a flavour. I'm happy to have a chat with you at any time and come into your groups, show you some of the things that we're doing in other parts of Walsall. Positive Opportunities Programme, Blakeney and Bloxbridge, is really worth going to see how many young people we've brought in just 12 months. Following a massive community, it was actually a knife crime that led to a shooting and a death of a man that was gang-related, but sent shockwaves through that difficult community. So, yes, there's been a place for enforcement, but there's been a place for council and its partners. We've put in an investment over 150 grand in youth opportunities there, and it's been brilliant. So, you're welcome as schools to come and see some of this for yourselves and get involved. And Mark's right, you know, anything we can do to support you, please do reach out. It's really important to us.
As Gary mentioned there, Stacey's with us today. We will be meeting Stacey in the second half of our debate, so you can put some questions to her as well. Have we got to any last questions before I call for a comfort break? One there, quickly. Thank you.
But what do you think is the best way to deal with those?
Keith, can I come to you first on that one, as we talked about justice before, didn't we?
Thank you. What I'd say in relation to that, it's not going to be a silver bullet in relation to what's going to solve this. I'd say one of the things you need to do is kind of look at the police and make sure that the police are given the ability and supported with the ability to have all the tools at their disposal. Now, they can do some things. This is a bit of a technical thing here called out-of-court disposals, which are diverting people away, you know, somebody that gets arrested potentially, and diverting people away from the court system. But that's currently not recognised by the Home Office, that good work that a lot of the police are doing, and the police have a whole host of priorities. So one of the things that we need to do nationally alongside the police is actually, you know, saying to the government, you need to recognise this work that the police are doing and support them in relation to doing that. So that's one thing, is actually supporting the police to do the diversionary work at that early end. There will be some young people that end up in the secure estate, as I've said, but it's the work that you do with children and young people when they are in the secure estate that's important. They shouldn't just be holding places for the same person to come out again. We've got to make sure that when the children are in there, they are experiencing as much as they can the opportunities that children outside of the secure estate are. So that is things around education whilst they are in custody. It is things around enrichment opportunities like this is now. So people might say we need to be quite tough on these people when they're locked up. What is that going to achieve? We do need to keep people safe, but what we do want to do is make sure that when somebody comes out of being locked up, is that they're coming out somebody that wants to and is able to contribute and be part of society. So it's not just it's not just, you know, a longer sentence debate, or are we going to be hard or soft. It's thinking about what we need to do to protect the public, but allied with that, what do we do to actually prevent this from happening? And if it has happened, how do we stop the people that have committed these offences, so I'm not making excuses for that, from doing it again?
Simon, I could see you nodding along there. Would you echo those thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Plainly, our prison system is in a state of crisis at the moment for a whole variety of different reasons. So I think it's important in principle that as far as possible, yes, we prevent people entering the criminal justice system in the first place. If they do enter it, then, as Keith says, the potential for out-of-court disposals and diversion is important, and indeed community sentences. And let's not forget that one of the reasons, one of the underlying causes for offending is mental ill health and also drug and alcohol. And so we need to get better at ensuring that we use community sentence treatment requirements more effectively in our courts, whether that's drug rehabilitation requirements, mental health treatment requirements, or alcohol treatment requirements, because if they are used effectively, they can firstly keep people out of prison, and secondly, remove the reason why they're involved in offending in the first place. And just as a general principle around rehabilitation, as a country, we're not awfully good at rehabilitation. We need to get a lot better because, yes, plainly we want to prevent people engaging in criminal activity in the first place, but if we can't prevent them doing it, we want to prevent them doing it again, don't we? Because otherwise you just get caught in that vicious cycle. And rehabilitation is something that we need to get better at because it's a win-win, isn't it? Rehabilitation cuts crime, there's less victims of crime, less pressure on policing, our public services, less impact on our criminal justice system. It'll save taxpayers money. Ultimately, it gives an opportunity for people to turn their lives around and make a positive contribution to society. So we need to invest and get better at rehabilitation.
I think we'll draw our first part of the debate to a close there. If you'd like to go for a comfort break, but first of all, please do give a warm round of applause to our panel. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Right, can everyone hear me? Yes, I've got a voice. If you find your seats, guys, we're going to get on with the next segment. Is yours on? Should we check yours? Hello. Manny's in the house. There we go. Give a massive round of applause to Manny. Here's here.
Thank you.
I think, Manny, you've ditched ITV for us, haven't you?
Yeah, I've just come straight from ITV studios. They asked me to do a live segment, but I did a recorded one with them just to be here and share my thoughts with you guys.
There you go. And you are joined with something. You come bringing us gifts, don't you, Manny?
Yeah, on Monday I was honoured and really privileged to be named ITV's fundraiser of the year at the Pride of Britain Awards.
Let's give that a round of applause.
You can see tonight, 8 p.m. on ITV1, an incredible night of unbelievable people, but people who are just ordinary in their lives doing amazing things, being profiled.
What did you wear last night?
That was Monday night, yeah, all sorts. We actually had a reception with the Prime Minister the day after as well, so he had a few of my thoughts about various issues, because it's important we take the message of what we're doing. It's not just about the award, it's the story behind the award.
So from when you got first nominated and from actually getting that award, how long has the process been, and how do you think they got down to the final few?
You know what, it's not a competition. When you're giving back and when you're helping people, it's not a competition. This is a select profile of a few stories that reach this stage, but there's so many people around our areas doing amazing things. Our feeds and our media is full of a lot of negative stuff, and it's about time we put something positive on. So, you know, I don't regard it as a win or a competition. It's just we get our opportunity to tell our story, and the real inspiration will be if people take on giving back, volunteering, not as an option, as a duty. If you've got a roof over your head, if you've got food on your table, if you've got okay health, which guess what, most of us do have, then you're sitting at the top of the world. You're already at the top of the world. You are more complete than you will ever know. All we've got to use is that ability inside us. Behind that award is hard work, dedication, commitment, is kindness, love, courage, compassion. Well, I don't own all of them. I don't own them. Manny's just a label on that energy, and that energy is in every single human being. Every single human being has got the ability to work hard and to listen and to gain knowledge, then put it into practice, and it's free of charge. It never runs out. If you decide to be kind today, you get up in the morning and you can use it again. Wow, never runs out, and it lives within us. Using it, like I said, is not an option. It's our duty to help others who may be homeless or may be struggling, poverty, or people who live with terminal conditions. So, you know, I encourage everybody to make it part of your normal life. And it's the words you use. It's not, yes, I've run marathons and I've walked to the other side of the country and, you know, done some extreme stuff, but just helping somebody, whether the words you use, encouraging them, uplifting them. The first person that will improve is yourself, and then the other person will be grateful for the words you gave them. So that's what we try and do every day.
Well done. I was going to ask, like, as you say, we can all do something and we're all better off when we unite together and, you know, show our efforts. What's the easiest way, do you think, some of these guys could get into doing something that you do and doing it on kind of quite a broad scale, but what's kind of the starting point, would you say?
You know, the starting point is here, this conversation that we're having. You're listening, you're gaining information, so you can leave this knowledge, throw it in the bin if you want, that's up to you, but you can also use it. You know, every day, every moment is a chance to learn and grow as a human being. I mean, I get up in the morning and I see my neighbour 3 doors away, fairly elderly, and, you know, it's autumn, there's leaves everywhere. So I leave my bed to sweep up all her leaves. She opens the curtains and sees her driveway empty. What did it cost me? Nothing. What energy did I use? I don't even own it. It lives inside being human. So she's going to have an uplifted day from that little small moment. I'm going to feel better from doing that anyway. It started my day well. So, you know, when people say about volunteering or what do you do? Well, Every single day you've got a choice to do something, and we can help other people very simply. There's lots of organisations. You go to a charity shop and say, do you need volunteers? I'll give you 3 hours every Saturday. Why not? Why not? You know, you're going to grow as a person. Put that on your CV, that you volunteer for 3 hours in a charity shop. Employer looks at that and thinks, well, that's the kind of person we want. It's not all about qualifications. It's not all about academic achievement. You can achieve in life as well by doing these simple acts.
Amazing. Now, you said you did you've done some challenges and things. What was the hardest one that you've done? And what was the one that you will remember for the rest of your life? Maybe you enjoyed it or you had a really good team.
Yeah, 2 things actually. The hardest one was 3 weeks ago. I decided to walk for 48 hours, non-stop, no sleep, around Molyneux Stadium. And I did that because previously I'd walked to Chelsea and I walked to Newcastle on my own. And I wanted the community to join in. I had mothers with their young babies. I had 90-year-old pensioners with knee replacements join me. I had Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin join me. I had Beverly Knight, Susie Perry and Conor Cody join me. So people of stature, people of fame, people who were struggling mentally, they all joined in this event. It required a lot of hard work. It was the toughest thing mentally and physically I'd ever done. And somebody said, did you feel pain? And I said, of course I did. Name me anybody in life that doesn't go through pain. Even the king, they say he's rich, still had cancer, still got kids that don't speak to him, you know, still has pain in his life. Well, it's your thought that gives pain what it wants. Pain wants you to fail. Pain wants you to stop. Pain wants you to give up. Well, you throw that in the bin. You throw that thought in the bin and you just pull out some good old-fashioned courage, and anything's possible. And the second event we do is something called Samosa Saturday. So my family cooks samosas and we serve them to fans and we say, have something to eat. Oh, how much do they cost? Nothing. Just have something to eat. But people donate. They donate towards a charity. We've done 60,000 samosas, 22 events. Like I said, we've had people, managers, ministers, take samosas off us, and we've had people who are homeless. So it's an inclusive event. Got 20-something volunteers who've helped me out. Previously, I didn't even know them. I'm not a charity. I'm not an organisation. I'm just somebody else who lives down the road, born and bred in Wolverhampton. And normal people can do these amazing things.
Amazing. Now, you said it's not always about kind of the money that you make from volunteering or fundraising, but is there a total sum that you have kind of fundraised over the years?
So at the moment, I'm an ambassador for a charity called Dementia UK. Dementia is a condition that affects 1 million people, and somebody asked me, why do you raise for them? Who is it? Your mom? Is it your dad? Was it your grandparents? And I said, no. Do I need, imagine only helping out when one of your own is affected. That's not being human. Being human is seeing somebody in trouble and going and helping them. So there's 1 million people that live with that condition, and helping them is our duty. We can't ignore that. And so that's a charity I raise for, but I've done stuff for Birmingham Children's Hospital, Wolverhampton Wanderers Foundation, Crisis, Homeless Charity, and we're just on the verge of altogether £400,000 raised for the charity.
Give that a round of applause, everybody. Whoa. Incredible. I was going to ask, have you got any challenges up your sleeve? What's the next thing?
This is the greatest moment of my life, this, standing here talking to them, because it's the only moment I live in. That's history. It's happened. That happened on Monday, visiting the Prime Minister, doing the Samosa Saturdays. Tomorrow, whatever I do tomorrow is just a prediction. It may happen, but it may not. So we ignore that, and we ignore this, and we live here. We give everything we've got here. Time is limited. If you live till 100, not many people do, you can throw 50 in the bin because you fall asleep and you get ready and you eat food. You got 50 left. Your previous past is gone, so actually you got less. Our time on this planet is quite small. You can't waste every day. Using love and kindness is a good way to be. Might as well use it. So this is my challenge, being here, talking to you, when I talk to you, it might uplift you, but it certainly uplifts me. So that's the most important thing. Feel the benefit yourself. There's one thing I can guarantee that's exactly the same in every single human being in this room, that you all want to be happy. I can guarantee that. You all want pleasure and love to be in your lives. We're all so similar, it's untrue. We might be wrapped differently, but who plays with the wrapping paper? You take that off and throw it in the bin. You look what's inside the box. Human beings are exactly the same. Doesn't matter where you're from, what you look like. I can only know about you if I talk to you, if I learn off you. So talk to people. This isn't, that phone, that's not your people. Your people. If someone says to me, can we do a Teams call? I'll say no. Name a coffee shop and let's go and meet. Let's go and talk to each other, realise each other's body language. Are you interested? What can you give me? And it's really important to not ignore people in life, and you'll learn so much by doing that.
That's brilliant. I've got a question. If you could tell your 10-year-old self something, what would you, if you were going to change anything or give some really hard-hitting advice? How old are you guys in the room, actually? How old are we? Got a good range?
16 to 18,
yeah?
Probably. Yeah.
What would you tell these guys if it was yourself?
I lived a fairly lonely life, to be honest. I didn't have that many friends at school. I was pretty much a loner, and I felt it hard to talk to people. There was times where I could never do this. I couldn't even talk to one person, let alone a crowd. And now I'm in schools every single day. I've been to Switzerland and Germany and France to talk to universities. They're asking for money to talk to them. And I'm like, ain't you got no humans in your country? And that's the most important thing I can tell, if I could go back, is I wish I'd kept a social environment back then. And it's not about going out every night. It's just about communicating. That communication can happen anywhere, People ignore each other walking down the street. Well, when I go shopping, my missus is like, oh my God, how long is this going to take? Because he's going to talk to every person he comes across, So talk to people, learn off people, and do it positively. If you ain't got nothing positive to say, don't say it. Just don't say it. If anger enters your mind, get rid of it, throw it in the bin. When you're angry, if I light a fire, the first thing that burns is the matchstick. The matchstick's burning itself. So you're the one affected straight away if you get angry before you impart it on somebody else. So get rid of anger, use uplifting words, and just talk to people.
Good words. That's all we've got time for. So give Manny a massive round of applause, please. That was amazing.
Thank you very much. And make sure you tune in at 8 o'clock tonight, because you'll see some unbelievable stories. I just sell a few samosas and do a bit of walking, but the other stories are incredible.
Thank you very much, Manny. Are you a Wolves supporter?
Massive, home and away, go everywhere. We're bottom of the league, but when it comes to giving back, there's no club like it. Yeah.
Get your samosas. Right, I think we've got Ray as well, who's going to do a little performance of spoken words. I'm going to pass you guys over. She's got much better voice than me.
Hello. From Birmingham, really. 30 seconds, because that is really on time. I literally got a poem about basically empowering youth and making you guys understand that, your voices matter, and you shouldn't let anybody take that away from you, really. You can play it now. What if I told you you could impact the future generation with the power of change that exceeds your imagination? A simple combination of communication and the application of knowledge. What if I told you you could create an earthquake filled with equity, a significant ability to give sound to the silenced? What if I told you you could empower untold stories, explore these compact inventories of younger minds? See, history has been painted in black and white, but if you seek the untold stories, you might just discover a rainbow. Let's remove dismay from this display of speaking out loud. We can make them proud to be who they are. Let's break down the fourth wall and deconstruct binaries, dynasties of change, investigate inquiries, sew together tapestries of young voices. Welcome them a place to stay, a place to be, a place to see and to be seen, a place for them to truly understand what heritage really means, a place where you can be different to fit in. Your identity is powerful. To be unique is your strength. It takes courage to build a pride. Because what if we were connected? What if love was injected into their veins, not into their roots, not into their veins? We could adapt this change. Yesterday's history will always stay the same, but tomorrow's history could change. Today, I'm telling you, you could impact the future generation with the power of change that exceeds your imagination. A simple combination of communication and application of knowledge. I'm telling you, you could create an earthquake filled with equity, a significant ability to give sound to the silence. You could empower untold stories, represent those before these, nurture seeds that grow to enrich this earth. I'm telling you, you can make this change. I'm telling you now. Thank you.
Have you been inspired by today? Okay, I was inspired 28 years ago to start a radio station by some two guys who spoke with a Wolverhampton accent, like this guy here, right? I've got a Wolverhampton accent. And these guys that were prevented from being on a radio station because they have a Wolverhampton accent inspired me to set up Kick FM back in those days. And that was to give young people a voice. And let me just tell you, this is one of the proudest days of my life. To have a conference that I've fought for 28 years, and you guys have made it. Thank you very much. We're running, isn't Manny inspirational? Right? Give him another round of applause. I'm absolutely... The biggest, basically, we all play what if in the morning. We get up and we go, what if we do this? And what if we, well, let me tell you, the best thing I ever did was contact this guy on LinkedIn and said, are you around? And straight away it came back, let's do it. No argument, let's do it. Now, if there's one guy in this country that's been busy this week, it's Manny. He has been everywhere. Everybody wants to know Manny. And it was just a stroke of luck, really, that today was the same day as you go onto ITV tonight at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, you will see Manny, fundraiser of the year in the UK at the Pride of Britain Awards. And he's got his, he's obviously got his prize there. It's achievement, it's fantastic. We're running out of time, unfortunately, but I would like to welcome back on stage Councillor Perry and Stacey to basically kind of wrap up tonight, or this afternoon. I feel like it feels like tonight, I've been here since 5 o'clock this morning. Just so you guys have got one final opportunity to ask these guys who make a decision. And you know, I'm going to welcome back Manny. Manny, come on. Come on. Yeah. It's a bit impromptu. I'm sorry, Manny wasn't expecting this, and all of these guys, to be honest. If you've got a question, put your hand up. We've got 10 minutes, and we're just going to take quick fire questions, one answer. And just tell me who you want the question to. Come on. Who's going to be first? Quick. Yeah, about anything you want. Right, this is an open session. You just tell us what you want. Ask us any question you like. Right. Thank you. There's a question about homelessness from somebody in the audience we've received. Is that, do we know who that is? Is this the young lady here on the end? Well, I'm going to run up here. What's your name? Abby. Give a round of applause for Abby. She's looking really scared.
Okay, this is a bit long-winded because I did some research behind it, but I'm going to speak about homelessness. So In Walsall, most of our population are unsheltered homeless people. These are vulnerable individuals in our community living on the streets. And from research that I've done in 2021-2022, there were 358 homeless people just in Walsall. And because of the cost of living crisis, and are now unable to even feed themselves regularly when living on the streets, this could make it impossible for some to afford appropriate housing. 2 in 3 homeless people suffer from drug and alcohol abuse, and also from research, 46.72% of homeless people are depressed, so they take more drugs and drink more alcohol, which is the most common cause of death within homeless people. Walsall is not a safe place as it anyway with knife crime, let alone vulnerable people who must sleep on the streets. It's getting to the point now where suicide rates are increasing because of vulnerable people in our community that are feeling alone and not supported. I understand that some things are being put in place to help, but it's not good enough and not supporting people in the right way. On your Insight page, it says that you will support most homeless people with maximising income with the support to claim benefits. However, most people who claim benefits are claiming illegally, and therefore there is not enough to go around for people who are in desperate need of financial help. So my question is to you. What more are you going to do to ensure the vulnerable people of Walsall at any age are made to feel safe in proper housing and with the appropriate financial support they have a right to?
Well done, Abby. You can feel the emotion coming through in that question, so it's obviously something very heartfelt there. I'm going to pass the microphone over to Gary.
Right, so I've been homeless. You wouldn't believe that, but I have. When I was 14, I was homeless. I lived with my 3 sisters, my brother, my parents, and my grandma. We were forced to live in a 2-bedroom flat. Politicians let me down. That's why I'm here today. Because when I was old enough to stand for election, I wanted to show those people who let my family down what a true local politician should be about, caring for the community and fighting for those needs. I have a sister currently in homeless accommodation. She is homeless. She won't be for much longer, but she's been there for 6 months. She's an alcohol addict. So I know very well the scenarios that you're raising. Just to give you some narrative, there aren't 350 some odd people living on the streets of Walsall. There's actually 14 people, and they're technically called rough sleepers, which is different to homelessness. Those 14 individuals are checked in daily, twice a day, by our homeless and rough sleeping team. They are choosing to live on the street. So they get a different level of care, so we provide warm blankets, food, access to services as needed, particularly those who are struggling with mental health and addiction. In terms of those other numbers you've talked about, there's been a slight increase. There is not enough private and social housing availability to put all of our people in who require a home, my sister being one of them. However, we have a statutory duty to put a roof over someone's head so they're not sleeping on the streets. So all of those people that you've referred to, well, there's actually 400 at the moment, 200 of those are families, are living in what we call temporary accommodation. So they're either, it's very rare we use a hotel, but we will in emergency situations. So if someone was to become homeless now, we would probably place them in a hotel in the next 24 hours. So tonight they've got somewhere to sleep, warm bed, food, etc. But they're in temporary accommodation. They're shelters, they are flats, there's bespoke accommodation. And what we do then, it's our duty, they will be prioritised. So in terms of the housing list, and you'll hear people talk about housing lists, they will be prioritised. So as houses become available, whether it's 3 beds, 2 beds or 1 bed properties, dependent on the need, they will get first dibs. So if you're homeless, you usually get placed where the first available property becomes empty. So, in a nutshell, not all those statistics are true, but we are doing everything we can to help the homeless of Walsall. Housing Support Fund as well is there for us, so nobody should be without food, because that's what that is used for, so we can get food to people, water to people, we'll even pay energy and electric bills, and we work with our agencies of those who've got addicts and specific needs. As I said, I gave you some examples.
Thank you very much indeed. One more question. I think Jenny's going to read this question out. I've just asked Jenny to do this for us. The young lady who wanted to ask the question was feeling a bit shy. So are you okay with that, Jenny? You didn't have much choice, did you?
I've got me piece of paper. So my question, or this person's question for the panel, is more than 42% of all councils have gotten rid of their youth centres, which limits teens' access to services and help as well as a place to meet their friends. There is a proven link that this increases antisocial behaviour in teenagers. How will you make sure our youth has funding for spaces like these to shelter them from drugs, gangs, knife crime, which is most prevalent in Walsall today?
We have the perfect person to answer that question. So I can see her nodding away. Councillor Stacey Nelson.
Thank you very much. Right, yeah, okay. We are right. The youth funding has been cut over the years by various governments. What we are doing now is, I think we've already spoken in the previous debate about your voice. Your voice is paramount to our decision making in the future. We haven't got a bottomless pit of money, but we are investing in the young people in Walsall. Through the big conversation that was held at the start of the year, and again the youth summit in August, what has become paramount is you want a youth council. My commitment is you are going to get a youth council. That youth council now is being worked on, where people will be invited from each school, from every voluntary section we have across Walsall, to participate in that. It will not be officer-led, it will be led by you. You will tell us what you want and how we can best support you. But knife crime, again, it starts at the grassroots, and I have to echo what both Mark, the leader, and the Police and Crime Commissioner said. If you know what's going on, then we want to hear. You know, I absolutely understand there's a scare factor of grassing, you know, and what the repercussions of that. But I don't know where the knives come from, but some of you may know where there is a knife, because these ain't knives that you peel your potatoes with. These are huge knives that are being used in our communities. If you know, please let us know, come forward. You can help us eradicate the knife crime. I can't do it on my own, and there's no amount of money that can stop it, but the voice of each and every one of you can.
Guys, thank you very much indeed. We're up against time a little bit, and before we go, I'd like to just, I'm going to thank a few people here, because without their support and without the hard work today, wouldn't have happened. I'd like to thank the head teacher, Mr. Riley, who's worked tirelessly behind the scene, and he's had to kind of change curriculum, timetables, provide facilities, and more than anything else, he's given us a start with a base outside. So we've got a little bit of a kind of a gem out there, a 40-foot Arctic trailer, which you're all welcome to visit. Next week, we're having an open half-term week. So you can pop in there, you can create podcasts, radio, social media. We'd ask you, if you can, download the KIC Radio app. Go on there, and you can book spaces. Let's say you've three girls, sorry, want to come down and make a podcast, just book in, tell us you're coming, and we'll be there. So we're open 10 till 4 every day next week. I'd like to certainly thank all the panel members for coming, because without them, this debate wouldn't have happened. And we've had some really key people. Have you enjoyed this afternoon? Have you got something out of it? This is the point. Can I just say, you have been so respectful. It doesn't always happen, but thank yourselves. Give yourselves a round of applause, because you've been brilliant. I'll do it. I'd like to thank Ed and Jenny. Jenny's been a bundle of fun all day. I've never met Jenny before, but I'm never going to forget her. I'd like to thank Siobhan. She's been great. Captain of the ladies. Basketball, I'll get it wrong all day, for coming and spending. The inspiration that she brings is to encourage you guys to be the next Olympian. UK Sport have been here, we've run sports activities, and what they've been doing is looking for people that have got the inclination to want to go and be a sportsman or a sports lady, or a sports person. So these are the type of people that we want to bring to you, okay? Before we go, I'm going to give the last word to this guy here, right? The man of the moment, There's never going to be another day like this, not in my life, right? This guy is an absolute inspiration. So give him one more round of applause for Manny Singhal.
Thank you, man. Thank you. You know what? I want to, what Abby said. She was really, really passionate about what she delivered. And she delivered it with knowledge. She went and did some research and found some knowledge. Whether it was incorrect or not, we can debate all day. But what we do know is the use of food banks was one of the fastest growing industries over the last 14 years. We never heard of a food bank, and now they're everywhere. I've spent 2 nights in Digbeth sleeping with the homeless there, and we do sleep outs every year. You know, if you ain't got a roof over your head, then no one's going to listen to Manny about volunteering and giving back. It's a basic right that everybody deserves, and she's really right to hold people accountable. I was in Downing Street on Tuesday, and yeah, we got our pictures taken with the Prime Minister, but my first words were, do better. I said, good morning, Prime Minister, do better. You're not here. It's not a role for glory. It's there to serve your people. And it's important that young people raise their voices just like Abby did, with knowledge, not just shouting, not just heckling, not just having go at figureheads, but actually do a bit of research. I'm pretty sure she'll go back and listen to what the councillor has said and see if those figures are actually true and how we can help. But really important, that's exactly how you should be. Use passion in your words, but use it with knowledge, and you'll get far. And change starts with, you know, me and you. I don't know what your name is. What's your name? And that's it, Oliver and Manny. You know, if we... do us a favour, look at somebody next to you. Go on, look at them. Yeah, look at them, man. Look at one person next to you. Go on, don't be embarrassed. Just look at them. And look at them and think about this. You know, change starts with you and me. That's it. We don't have to change the world. If we decide to just change one person, one person's opinions, and one person, we get them to think positively, then pretty much there'll be nobody left to help because we've already helped. So I was really inspired by her words, and thank you for having me here today.
Manny, we look forward to seeing you tonight. Have a good night tonight. Yeah, I bet you do. It's had a hell of a day. It's been on ITV and all over the place today. Guys, thank you very much indeed. We thank you for your respect. We thank you for your tolerance. And thank you for your engagement. Thank you very much indeed.